My name's Harlan Kilstein. I'm the top dog at the Dogington Post, and Merrick Pet Care has come along and sponsored this series. Why? Because they care about what happens to your fur babies. When you feed your dog Merrick, as I do, you know that you are feeding them really high quality food, the same kind of food that you would feed your own family, because after all, aren't our fur babies part of our family, right? So when you open a can of Merrick, it's got the highest quality ingredients, and you see right on the bag or right on the can the three letters that let you know that it's made in the USA and it doesn't contain any strange products that are going to get you in trouble. Okay, so um, away we go, and um, and we're ready for today's session. So today we're ready for some more power to the paw. And power to the paw is Merrick's principle of delivering the best. And what they're doing is not only bringing along one of the top trainers in the world for you to talk to, but uh, they're going to be making a donation to National Mill Dog Rescue. You know, at the end of our program, we're going to ask you a question. And whoever asks the question first is the one who is the winner. We ask a question based on our talk today. You type it in fast, you win. What you'll win today is a voucher for a 25-pound bag of new grain-free real Texas beef. It's a $60 value, and they're also going to give a bag in your honor to National Mill Dog Rescue. The next time you go out and check out food for your fur baby, check out the dry and wet dog food and cat food Merrick products. You can get them at Petco, all kinds of pet independent specialty stores. As I told you, I buy mine at Whole Foods. Not every Whole Foods take them, do it. If there is a Whole Foods near you that doesn't carry it, ask them to, or just move to a different neighborhood. It's worth it. Okay, so guys, everybody, I want to introduce our guest today. His name is Steve Reid. He's the owner of SR Dog Training. He's created his mission of changing the world for dogs after volunteering with his local humane society, and he discovered a real desire to help those shelter dogs. His background in education enables him to re-educate both the owner and the dog, and as you probably already know, usually it's the owner that requires more education. Steve is going to address common behavior issues with the family dog and with the shelter dog.
Great. Thank you, Harlan. I just want to start off by thanking Dogington Post as well as Merrick Pet Care for this great opportunity to be a part of sharing my information along with all the other trainers that have gone on before me to try to hopefully help our listeners here today. And I want to thank all those who are listening via telephone as well as our webinar. I just want to thank you for tuning in. I hope you find some useful information that you can implement with your dog and help spread along to other dog owners that you know. So I just want to start off by telling you a little bit about my background. My background is in education. I have a master's degree in physical education and sports pedagogy, as well as being a certified strength and conditioning specialist. I have taught and coached children ranging in age from 3 to 18 years old, and I have worked in the fitness industry, coaching and working with collegiate athletes and professionals in numerous fields. So that's a little bit about my background. I think that has given me some insight into helping to break down the complexities of dog training, simplifying that, and transferring that over to owners who can then in turn help their dog. So my presentation today is going to be about addressing behavior issues with the family dog and shelter dog. So really what I want to show here is that what we would do with our family dog and what we would do with our shelter dog are for the most part one and the same. There's going to be certain special needs when it comes to shelter dogs and certain special needs when it comes to the family dog, but I want to try to show that there's a lot of commonality here. So let me just move on with my slide here. Let's see. All right. So I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about my philosophy. like Harlan mentioned, I began volunteering at my local humane society, and I was absolutely blown away by the number of dogs there that were really would make for great family dogs. You know, you can envision them right in a home with a loving, caring family. And it's unfortunate that in the great country that we live in, there's nearly 8 million companion animals enter our U.S. shelters each year. And a tragic statistic is that nearly 4 million of those will not enter out the front door into the arms of a loving, caring family. Unfortunately, they're going to be killed and put down or euthanized, which is, in my opinion, a euphemism that's used by our shelters to soften the reality of what's going on there. And many of the behavior problems or so-called behavior problems that cause these dogs to enter shelters could have either been prevented or significantly improved upon by their owners just through simple, clear, fair expectations. So I think there's a distinct lack in a clear, fair expectations for our dogs, and it's leading to behavior problems and dogs entering shelters when they really don't need to. So what I'm trying to do is to help empower the owner and help them convey the information to their dog in a way that the dog understands. And there's no need for harsh corrections and the archaic training styles of the past. We've moved on. We've grown in technology. We've grown in every area of medicine, and we need to move forward in our dog training. So my system is called my re-education system, where I'm going to deliver clear and fair expectations to the owners, and they can in turn transfer that over to their pet and to their companion animal. And there's really no reason, in my opinion, for owners to live stressed, frustrated, worried about what their dog's doing, what they're going to do, how they're going to deal with the problems. We can address that, and they can move on and live the happy life that they envision for their dog. So that's really what I'm trying to do. When it comes to my training system at SR Dog Training, the first thing that I do is when I get a call from an owner and they are detailing the problems that they're having with their dog, what I want to do is determine what the underlying cause of that behavior problem is. Because often what they consider a behavior problem is really just a symptom of the root cause of the problem. So well, the first thing that I really want to do is to troubleshoot and find the underlying cause of the problem. We can't attack the symptoms. We must look at and find the underlying cause of the problem. So successful dog training, in my opinion, takes place when we can accurately determine the root cause of the problem and put together a clear, structured protocol for the owners to carry out that's realistic for their everyday life and something that their dog will understand and that will be fair to them. So that's the first step when I meet any family and any dog, is to look at what's the cause of their problem. Some typical causes of behavior problems, which are often overlooked, are health-related causes, diet, among other things. When it comes to health-related causes, you know, if an owner calls me and says, "Oh, just recently I go to pet my dog on the head, around his ears, and he snaps at me," it's not unusual for him. He hasn't been doing that. That's going to immediately send up a red flag. Why is the dog doing it? The snapping or the growling is just a symptom. What's the cause? And it could be a multitude of things. Number one, it could be an ear infection. If the dog has an ear infection and you go to pet him by his ears, he's trying to communicate to you, this is hurting me, please stop. And that's the only way that he can communicate that to us. So we have to look at, is there any health-related reasons? If a dog has been successful with housebreaking, but yet they begin urinating in the house, we're going to immediately, I'm going to suggest that they consult with their vet and look for a urinary tract infection. So we can't just start trying to attack housebreaking until we rule out the fact that there's no health-related causes that's contributing to this. Diet is also another huge component to our dog. Just like our diet affects how we feel, how we act, our dog's diet affects them just the same way. So I like to recommend, I feed dogs that I worked with, as well as recommend to clients, that we look for a premium grade dog food that's grain-free. Harlan did mention this in the beginning. Merrick makes a terrific product, and I'm not just saying it because they're sponsoring this event, but I truly believe that that's a good quality product, and what we're feeding our dog has a significant impact on their behavior and ultimately their relationship with us. And so we need to troubleshoot the underlying causes. So let's take a look here. Things such as excessive barking, destroying of the home when owners are gone, displays of aggression. These are common behavior problems that I get calls with on a daily basis. Each week we get calls for things like this. These are often just a symptom of something else. So for me just to look at and say, oh, we just got to address the barking, let's strap on a citronella bark collar. So every time the dog barks, he gets a spray of citronella in the nose. That would just be attacking the symptom. Rather, we need to look at why is the dog barking excessively? Is there too much energy? Is it barrier frustration? What's contributing to that? Dogs destroying the home when the owners are gone. That could be for anything. It could be a housebreaking problem. It could also be a separation anxiety issue, which is a whole nother ball game, and we need to treat it like that. We need to treat those underlying causes of separation anxiety. Displays of aggression, that's a common one. Aggression in dogs is unfortunately very common and unfortunately results in dogs being surrendered to shelters and remaining in shelters or being put down in shelters because of their aggression problem. But we need to determine why is the dog showing and displaying aggression. So that's really what we have to look at first. The term dominance and dominance aggression, in my opinion, is thrown around way too much in the dog training world. Certainly there could be some displays of dominance aggression and dominance issues, but in my experience, most aggression cases are occurring from fear-based aggression. So the dog's fearful. The dog's fearful of a person they don't know. The dog's fearful of another dog. So we need to determine why is the dog showing aggression, and we need to address that. So we need to make the dog feel more confident in us, more confident in themselves, and then in turn the aggression will start to subside, and we can implement the rest of the protocol as we go along. So it's important to get the right determination, put a right plan together, and then carry it out. That's how we create a fair, balanced, and safe training protocol, not just reacting to the symptoms that we're seeing. So what I'm going to do here today is I'm going to take you through a couple case studies of actual dogs and families that I've been working with what I would consider fairly common behavior problems that you're going to see with a dog in maybe even in your home, dogs you've had in the past, and even the shelter dog. So I'm going to give you a couple of those case studies. What I'm going to mention here today is what I've used in my experience with these particular dogs. I'm not saying that this information is going to be applicable to every situation, so you're going to have to decipher the information, determine if it's appropriate for your situation, and if you're not sure, feel free to contact me, send me an email, give me a phone call, or contact a professional in your area that can give you clear guidance on your specific case. So let's take a look first, though. My training program consists of a short-term and a long-term plan. So when I meet with an owner and I sit down with them, we determine the underlying cause, so what we're really going to address. We take a look at first the short-term plan. So it's going to be immediate action steps to either, number one, control the dog in the situation in order to keep the dog safe, the human safe, and other dogs safe, first and foremost. From there, we're going to look at what's the immediate dog training techniques that we're going to start implementing. So we have to have a short term so we can address things right away and start setting things on the right track. So it could be different management techniques if the dog needs to possibly wear a muzzle in certain situations. Muzzles are not something to be frowned upon. They have some misconceptions with them, but muzzles are a great tool to use as management to keep the other people safe, keep the owner safe, myself safe if I'm working with the dog, and to keep other animals and other dogs safe. Other tools such as simply crating a dog when you're not home if they have separation anxiety, that would be an immediate thing so we can keep the dog safe, our home setting safe. We need to implement an immediate plan. From there, we're going to look at our long-term plan. So that's the ultimate goal for the training program. So what do we want to solve? How are we going to improve the underlying problem? And this goes in conjunction with short-term plan in all of our subsequent sessions after that that'll reach our ultimate long-term excuse me, long-term goal. So let's take a look at my first case study here. So client number one is Sammy, a 2-year-old English bulldog. The behaviors that the owners are reporting is that Sammy begs at the table and jumps on guests. I think this is a fairly common set of problems that a lot of owners have. A lot of owners see this problem with puppies in particular. We see puppies that jump on guests, on family members. They might come by the table and look for snacks from the table. And when a puppy's doing this kind of behavior, we think it's cute, we think it's fun, we encourage it, it's okay, it's a puppy. However, whatever we do with a puppy, we need to keep in mind and ask ourselves, am I going to be okay with this behavior when the dog is 5 years old and 80 pounds? So it's okay for a small puppy to be doing this, but do I want this 80-pound full-size dog with full-size limbs, full-size mouth and teeth to be jumping on guests, to be begging at the table? That's when owners then start blaming the dog. Oh, the dog's doing this, the dog's doing that. But we have to be mindful of our own actions. What have we been encouraging and fostering in our own dog? So it's important to remember when you have a young dog, am I setting him up and us up for success in the long run? So in this particular case, the immediate short-term plan for this owner was for them to implement consistency in their routine. So what I mean by that is consistency in ignoring the dog begging at the table and ignoring the dog when he's jumping on guests or on themselves. So consistency is key across the board when it comes to dog training. Consistency with obedience commands, with our rules, our expectations. We must be consistent. That's going to be fair to the dog. We can't change things up whenever we feel like. The dog can't decipher. So if you allow the dog to jump on you on the weekends when you come in the door from gardening outside and your pants are already dirty and you don't mind the dog jumping on you, you can't tell the dog no, off. Meanwhile, when you come home on a Wednesday night at 6 o'clock in the evening in your business suit, you can't tell the dog. He's not going to differentiate between an expensive suit and your work clothes in the yard. So we have to be consistent across the board. So for this particular dog, I suggest that the owners ignore the dog when he's begging at the table and ignoring the dog when he's jumping. So whenever we're looking to make and intentionally cause a behavior to go extinct, we have to allocate at least 30 days of consistency in order for that behavior to go extinct. So the owners were instructed to ignore and not to reinforce the behavior at all. So when we're making the behavior go extinct, it's going to take some time. If this behavior has been going on for close to 2 years for Sammy, we can't expect it to go away overnight. We have to give it some time. So it's going to take 30 days in order for this behavior to go away and the dog to learn a new routine. Now, during that time frame, there's a phenomenon that occurs whenever you're trying to make a behavior go extinct, and that's called an extinction burst. And really what that is, it's the dog's all-out attempt to get you to reinforce the very behavior that you're intentionally causing to go extinct. So what that means is if the dog usually just sits patiently waiting at the table, and for a couple nights now you haven't been feeding the dog any food off the table. All of a sudden one evening the dog might decide that he's going to go all out and try to get your attention and to get you to reinforce that behavior. So the extinction burst can manifest itself in other behaviors that weren't originally displayed. So if the dog would just sit quietly, he might start now barking, mouthing, jumping, other behaviors that weren't present. And this extinction burst is really, like the old saying goes, things are going to get worse before they get better. This is really what it is. So an extinction burst is important for owners to understand because they might start getting frustrated in themselves and say, oh, we've been doing so well, why is Sammy regressing and going backwards? Really, he's not. He's just going through the process of extinction. So if the owner understands this, the owner is going to continue their vigilance in ignoring the dog and not rewarding the behavior. Another concept is that of spontaneous recovery. So if you've been completely successful and you've gone through your 30 days and all of a sudden one evening on the 95th day, the dog swings by the dinner table and says, let me just see if I can pick up a snack right now. And the owner says, oh, the dog's doing so great. What's the harm in throwing Sammy a slice of steak, throws the dog the steak. Now we've just started this whole process over. Sammy now knows that there's a possibility and a good chance that if he begs at the table or jumps on guests, he's going to get what he wants. So we could very well start this behavior all over again. So this is important that we are vigilant in following through during that 30-day period, as well as after, that we don't reinforce this negative behavior, what we consider behavior problems. So in a typical family, there's going to be more than one individual in the household. There's going to be guests coming over. So we need to make sure that we have all family members and guests on board with this. Because extinction works, it just needs to be carried out diligently. Now, this was the short-term plan that we had in place here as we're working up to our long-term plan, where we've been implementing various obedience commands, where we have a solid place command, so the owners can just put Sammy in his place over on his bed, and he's expected to stay there for the duration so the owners can eat dinner. They'll free him up and then reward him with his dinner for the evening. So that would be our long-term plan. But for right now, this is our short-term immediate plan. So let's take a look and move on to client number 2. Client number 2 is Bailey, an 8-month-old long-haired dachshund who has a housebreaking issue. Housebreaking is something that every dog owner, especially every puppy owner, is going to have to deal with. So at 8 months old, we would sort of expect the housebreaking to be ironed out, but this case, Bailey was still having some issues. So the owners called me in. I looked at and tried to determine the underlying cause of the problem. The first thing that I looked at was the diet. What kind of food are you feeding them? Is it a good quality premium dog food, grain-free? A lot of these junk dog foods that have a lot of additives to it can lead to frequent bowel movements, which can contribute to housebreaking problems. We were troubleshooting to determine if there's a urinary tract infection that can be contributing to this. So we looked at the whole broad spectrum here to really troubleshoot everything. But what I determined based on this case was that timing was an issue for the owner. So in dog training in general, we need to always be mindful of our timing, because the concept of timing is really, it's a common disconnect between dog and human. So we're able to make an association between a previous action and its consequence at a later date. So we know we can go to work for 2 weeks, and on that Friday of the second week, we're going to get our paycheck. Dogs don't know that. They can't make that long-term association. The dogs, really, the optimal window of opportunity is 1.5 seconds or less of the action. So if we're trying to reinforce a behavior or discourage it or correct the behavior, the reinforcement, discouragement, or correction must come within 1.5 seconds or less of the action. So if we're training obedience commands with our dog, we ask him to sit. We immediately want to acknowledge that behavior as being a good thing. We're going to reward him or her, let them know that it's a correct behavior, and then we can move on. Same thing with discouragement, particularly when it comes to housebreaking. If a dog goes to the bathroom in the house at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the owners come home at 6 o'clock and notice the accident on the ground, we can't correct the dog for that. The dog's not going to make the association that their accident at 3 o'clock in the afternoon is what the owner's mad about. They're going to just learn that when my owner comes home, he's mad, I get yelled at, and it's not happy. It's not a happy time for the dog. A lot of people say, oh, no, the dog understands. He knows what he did wrong. Really, he doesn't. The dog just knows that he's getting yelled at, the owner comes home, and this can lead to complex problems down the road. So it's important that whatever we do it within 1.5 seconds of the action. So in this case, I instructed the owner to keep the dogs in a crate or small confined area when they couldn't have a watchful eye on them. So that way we made sure that no accidents were occurring, because the dog's not going to want to go in the area that they're residing in. And when you want the dog out of the crate or out of the cage, the dog must be close to you within sight. Where that means you keep them in a little bit of a larger area where you can watch, and that way if you notice Bailey starts going to the bathroom, you can just scoop him up, run outside, and then immediately praise outside after the dog goes to the bathroom. So we don't want to let the dog go outside come back in. It takes us a minute and a half to get inside. We go in the kitchen, we rustle through, then give a treat. The dog's never going to make the association between going to the bathroom and getting the treat because that's too long of a gap. We're going to want to keep treats in our pocket, immediately reward after going to the bathroom, or just reward with verbal praise and affection. So the concept of timing is critical in every aspect of dog training, whether it's, as previous with Sammy, jumping on guests. We're not going to reward the dog when he's jumping on us, but as soon as all four paws hit the ground, that's a perfect time to reward and praise the dog for being in the right position. So that's what we want to keep in mind with everything. And one last thing I just want to mention here is the concept of patience. It takes time to housebreak a dog. It takes time when it comes to extinction. It takes approximately 30 days for a behavior to go extinct. It takes time to train dogs, to have dogs learn new behaviors, new skills, new obedience. So we live in an instant gratification society with instant coffee, instant credit, instant news. We want everything now. We want everything yesterday. But we have to teach our dog, as well as ourselves, impulse control, patience, and just overall a sense of let's give things time to iron itself out. So that's important to dog training as well, that I want to make sure I reinforce here and let everyone understand. All right, let's take a look at my next client here. So client number 3 has what I consider one of the most important aspects of owning a dog, and I'll get to that in a minute. But our dog here is Odie, a 5-year-old lab pit bull mix who is actually a shelter dog, saved from a kill shelter and brought to a no-kill shelter, has been in and out of some foster homes, has a jumping and overall high energy issue. So high energy dogs are very common, and unfortunately a lot of them end up in our shelters. And once a dog is in a shelter for an extended period of time, even just a few weeks, kennel stress starts to set in. The dogs get a little frantic in there. They're not used to it. That's not a natural environment for them to be warehoused in cages on cement or blacktop. It's not natural to them. As a result, as you can imagine, if we were put in an unnatural situation, that's going to manifest itself in a variety of ways. So same thing with dogs. They get pent-up energy, and they're trying to relieve that energy in some way, and usually in ways that we consider inappropriate. So what was my suggestion for this dog? Was to relieve the dog's energy. So I consider a lack of appropriate mental and physical exercise to be one of the leading causes of behavior problems in dogs. And I know that's a bold statement to make, but I'm making it because I believe it to be true, that too many dogs are lacking appropriate outlets for their energy and their mental stimulation. As a result, we're seeing behavior problems. So one thing that is important to implement is exercise. Exercise, whether it be in a mental form or physical. So some things you might want to consider as far as being options that you may want to implement is daily structured walks, games, fetch, frisbee, tug, all of which, when it comes to games like fetch, frisbee, and tug, need to be played with rules. So we don't want the dog to be controlling the game and running around. We want to be communicating to our dog what the rules are to the game, just like we would if we were playing a game with a child. We tell them the rules before, then let them go play. Same thing when it comes to our dogs. We want to have rules and structure for them to follow. Mental activities, obedience commands, interactive toys and puzzles, even nose and scent work is a great activity to do with our dogs. So what I like to recommend to owners do is every morning, I know we have a busy schedule, everyone's rushed for time, but if you can get a solid structured walk, not one where our dog's dragging us down the road and it's all over the place, but a nice structured walk along with just some simple obedience commands, 5 or 10 minutes of obedience commands in the morning, you're going to address your dog's physical and mental needs. So you're going to relieve that pent-up energy, so when you go off to work, your dog's more likely to be calm and relaxed in the home. So that can help improve a lot of areas. And we see this a lot with shelter dogs. Like I said, because they're in that artificial environment, they're not able to get the outlets that they need. So I recommend everyone begin volunteering at a local shelter or humane society in their area. The dogs can really benefit from you being there. Not only the socialization, the interaction, the simple commands you could start working with them, giving them just walks around the block, that all just helps and compounds over time and will eventually make them more adoptable and help them find a home that they deserve to be in. So if there's one thing that I can say that I feel is one of the leading reasons why we see behavior problems is a lack of appropriate exercise. People think just letting the dog run around the house is enough for them. It's really not, especially in high-energy dogs, and then we see some major issues. One other case study that I have that I'm working with is 2 huskies that are in a home. They are not getting walks because they're difficult to walk on a leash. So that was really the number one underlying problem, is they can't walk on a leash well. They're tangling up, almost knocking the owners over. Big dogs, 100-pound dogs each, you can't blame the owner for having difficulty. So we have to dress the walks first so that we can get them out on walks, burn off the physical energy, and then give them that constructive outlet for their energy. Because right now they're destroying the couches. They've already went through one couch in the home, and the other one's down to a wood frame. So not having appropriate outlets for our energy is the underlying problem, not the destroying of the couch. That's a symptom of an underlying problem. In this case, the overall high energy and jumping, the relieving of the energy is our underlying problem. So if you get one thing from this, it's give your dog appropriate outlets for its energy. Work obedience commands with your dog. Not only will your dog be more obedient, but its mental energy will be satisfied. Give your dogs appropriate structured walks, appropriate outlets and games. These are beneficial to the relationship between you and your dog. So it establishes boundaries and lets the dog come to you for what to do next. So to wrap up my training program, we have to look at whether something's going to be fully rehabilitated, or we're going to look at management. The term rehabilitation, I think, is thrown around a lot in dog training. It's been made popular and is being thrown around. Rehabilitation is definitely possible, but it's not always possible. So you can rehabilitate, you can condition, counter-condition, desensitize, or flood a dog. Flooding, rarely used. I don't think it should be the first line of training, that's for sure. But in rare instances, it may be appropriate. That has to be determined by a professional. But you can desensitize a dog to the vacuum if he's scared of the vacuum. You can rehabilitate that. You can, counter-condition the dog so that way he starts loving going in the car for rides if he was originally afraid of going in the car. So those things you can rehabilitate. However, in some cases, management might be the last stage, the final component of our long-term plan. After we go through the initial short-term plan, work on our obedience all the way up through an advanced off-leash obedience, that's a main component because we can manage our dog better. We can put our dog in a long downstay, allow them to relax. If new guests come over, we can put them in a place command so the dog doesn't have to ambush the guests. So a good solid base of obedience, off-leash obedience, is critical. But management might be necessary. Not every dog is going to want to frolic and play with every dog it meets. It might have a select few friends that it likes to play with. Doesn't mean it's going to want to play with every dog. So you might want to have the dog wear a muzzle if he's going to meet a new dog that you want to see. There's different things that are going to be managed and not completely solved. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that we have to honor our particular situation in our dog. We can't expect him to be rehabilitated for everything. So those are just two other components. I can talk a whole seminar on that, but not going to today. But that's a final component to my program. Is it's going to be rehabilitated, or are we looking at a management component here? So let me just get this out of the way here. All right. So once again, I just want to thank everyone who's attending this webinar today. You can check out my website. I have articles that go a little bit more in depth to some of the aspects that I mentioned here today at srdogtraining.com. as well as check out my Facebook page so you can get updated on my weekly videos and articles. And Harlan, if anyone has any questions, I'd be more than happy to try to lend some insight there.
Okay, so great. Everybody come type in your questions and oh my God, here they come. Katrina
Great, I'm glad
asks,
to hear it.
oh, you have no idea what you're going to get. Um,
Okay.
Katrina says, what's flooding?
What's flooding? Flooding is basically when you're going to make the dog go through, for example, if a dog's scared of the hardwood floors and he won't walk on the hardwood floors in your house, you're going to basically force the dog to experience the stimuli that it's fearful of. So if it's scared of the hardwood floors, you might put the dog on a leash and just, guide him across and just confidently walk across the hardwood floor to show him that the hardwood floor is not something to be afraid of, or something that can hurt them. Like I said, flooding's not something that you would use in every scenario. Unfortunately, some dog trainers just like to get quick results and flood the dog. I don't believe in that. However, like anything, it's a tool to be used in its right time and place. So flooding is usually the last option and not something that's commonly used, at least in my program.
Okay. Denise says that there are problems pulling on the leash. What should she look for?
Okay, well, pulling on a leash is an all too common one, and that's something. It depends, Like if I
Well,
was working with her.
I went for a walk with my dog this morning, and she didn't have a problem pulling on the leash. I had the problem. I was the one pulling on the leash. She was fine.
Okay, well
Yeah.
that's the other thing. You don't want dogs. You don't want to try to restrain them when you're on the leash. So if you're restraining the dog and there's tension on the leash, the dog's out in front of you and pulling, that's going to spark the dog's opposition reflex and cause them to pull even more against the leash. So you want to try to always maintain that loose leash and have the dog at your side. So you can just start working in some of the obedience commands. Start teaching in a formal heel, showing that a loose leash and being at your side is a positive thing for the dog. I like to put a dog in a heel, have the dog walk at my side, and then I'll give them the opportunity to free them up and allow them to go sniff and smell the scents and mark the area like they'd like. But there's an on and off time, a time for a structured walk, and then a time for them to go and enjoy the walk and smell around what's natural for the dog to do. So we don't want to be restraining and pulling the dog back. We want to try to maintain a loose leash at all times.
Okay. Next question. Um, Diane has found that she's found a food that's too high in protein can cause her dogs to be hyper. Although we exercise every day with walks and play, it still causes problems. Have you found this in your practice?
Um, Sometimes, a dog, just like us, might have an undesirable, reaction to a food, to, something we're feeding them. So if she knows that's the cause of the problem, that's great that she was able to troubleshoot and determine that that was the cause. I would, I would recommend that she speaks with her veterinarian to determine, if there's another suitable dog food that maybe is lower in protein or that's right for her dog. So if you know that's the cause, then look at that as being an option. But overall, generally a premium high quality dog food is good for most dogs. However, there's always the exception to the rule. But I'm glad she's giving her dog appropriate outlets for his mental and physical exercise. That's critical, and I'm glad that she's doing that because unfortunately, like I said, not a lot of owners do that, and we see that a lot of in our shelter system. So just continue giving your dog those outlets. Continue with that, and speak to your vet about possibly changing and switching over to a different dog food that might be appropriate.
Okay, next question. I work with rescue shelter dogs to prep them for rehoming. They don't pack, and I have trouble getting time to work with 15 dogs at a time.
Okay, well, so she has. What's the issue? That they're not getting along together, all 15?
Um, I'm guessing so she has to work them. Uh,
Individually?
yeah, she can't work with them in a group.
Okay. All right. Well, first of all, I want to thank her for helping the shelter dogs and working with them. That's unbelievable work, and you're literally saving a life by doing that. So I want to thank her for doing that. It's commendable work, and it's not necessarily easy work, but significantly rewarding. And it's integrating multiple dogs into a pack and having them work as a cohesive unit is something that takes time, takes patience, takes a little bit of experience to be able to read the situation. Like I said earlier, it may come down to be a little bit of a management issue in the beginning, especially. So you may have to keep certain dogs separate, and you may have to work them separate. But in time, let one dog meet another dog individually, take them out on a walk first, have a one handler for each dog, let them just go on a walk together, let them ignore each other, see how they interact like that. Like I mentioned, there's nothing wrong with using a muzzle. I'm a big proponent of having every dog conditioned, positively associating a muzzle with something good. So every dog should be muzzle trained, in my opinion. Even if you have the sweetest family dog you can imagine, there's nothing wrong with the dog being used to and comfortable with wearing a muzzle appropriately. Because if ever there was a severe emergency, the dog was in a situation, they could snap and bite when that's not usually what they do. But if they comfortably can wear a muzzle, you could put that on them and have the situation safer and better under control. So I have a certain protocol I follow when conditioning a dog to wear a muzzle, so it becomes associated only with positive experiences. But there's no reason that the dog can't meet another dog wearing a muzzle. So that way it sets the dogs up for success as well as you. So I think every dog should be comfortable wearing a muzzle. I find that the Baskerville muzzles tend to be comfortable and easy to use. You could check and see what you think is appropriate and check with the manufacturer to get appropriate size of the muzzle, which is critical too. Not something that's too tight where it's uncomfortable on the dog, but not something that's too loose that could ever pop off. So make sure you speak with the manufacturer and get appropriate sizing. But that's something I would look into, is getting a dog to wear a muzzle comfortably so they can maybe get into interact with other dogs they wouldn't necessarily be able to.
Okay, so I hope you guys are going to keep typing in the questions. Beth says, my sister has young children and wants to adopt a dog. They are looking at a 3 to 4-year-old female boxer pit bull mix who was rescued at age 9 weeks and babied by her previous owner. The dog supposedly has no behavior problem except shyness. She seems good with children. Should they adopt this dog, and if so, what should they do to build her confidence?
Okay. When it comes to something like that, you definitely want to speak with the shelter or rescue organization that you're working with. Get as much background as you can on a dog, especially when you have a young child involved. It's always important to be extra cautious and vigilant with how you go about choosing the right dog. So actually what a good suggestion would be, which is something I like to do, is if somebody's interested in adopting a dog from a shelter, look in your area, try to find find a qualified professional that's in your area. It's worth asking a trainer to come to the shelter to meet the dog, interact with the dog. They can get a good feel, read the dog a little bit better in person, speak with the shelter, and they can give you a good insight as to whether or not the dog's going to be the right fit based on its temperament, its behavior, its energy level, how it will fit into your home setting. So it's good to get that recommendation from a trainer to know if it's going to be a good match for you, so they can determine if the dog is going to be right for your setting, because you want the dog to be successful as well as your family, especially when you have young children involved. It's extra important because dogs do react differently to children than they do to adults. So they perceive them differently than they do adults, and for that reason, we need to make sure that everybody's safe. So I think it would be worthwhile to at least do one session with a trainer in your area and ask them to come down. Most will. I know I certainly would if someone was interested in a dog, to go down to the shelter, meet them, spend some time with the dog, spend some time with the family, and see the interactions firsthand and see if it's going to be a right fit for everyone involved.
Okay, fantastic answer. Okay, let's go to Annette. Annette says, my dog is 2 years old. My dog is 2 years old, a rescue, and we got him at 10 months. He loves his tennis ball, but he won't always drop it in front of us. He'll drop it 1 foot away from us and run to get into position. How do we get him to consistently drop it in front of us?
Okay, all right, that's a good one. That's pretty common, and I'm glad you're playing fetch with your dog. That's a great outlet for his energy. So that's terrific. Um, when it comes to basically any interactive game, whether it's fetch, it's tug, it's frisbee, the dogs pick up on how to play it, but they don't know the formal rules. Whether it's bring it right back to us and then drop the ball, or they stop 2 feet away, or they try to get you to chase them. They don't know the rules exactly, so we're going to have to show it to them so they know how to play the game. So what I like to do when teaching a dog the game of fetch, I'll have the dog on a long line. So a long line's basically like your regular leash, except that much bigger. So it could be 20 feet in length, 40 feet in length. Put the dog on a long line. So that way, when I throw the tennis ball down, the dog goes and grabs it. I'm going to encourage him to come back. I could step back a little bit, call him over to me. As he comes in, if he stops a little away or he starts to stray to the right and left, I can just guide him in with the long line, not pulling him in or yanking him in, but just guiding him in with the long line. So I have positive control over him. So he gets back to me. I can reward him for that. In the initial stages, I can have another tennis ball available. So that way when he sees it, hopefully he'll drop out the ball he has in his mouth right now, and you throw the other ball for him to go and chase. So having two of the same items, so if you're using a tennis ball in this instance, have two tennis balls, one for him to go and retrieve, and the other one in your pocket, so when he comes back to you, you say out, show him the other ball, he drops the ball, it's in his mouth, and you throw it again. So that way you can show him that that's the rules for the game. He has to out the ball first, then he immediately gets the other one. And the long line really comes into play because we're able to have positive control. The dog's not going to stop at a distance, wander off, or force us to chase after the dog, which completely turns it into another game altogether. Another quick thing when it comes to playing interactive games with our dog, we always want to be the one that starts and ends the game. So I might keep the tug as a special toy. If I like to play tug with a dog, I'll keep the toy out of the dog's reach normally. I'll take it out. I'll start the game with the dog, play the game. Then when I notice the dog's starting to get a little tired or I'm running out of time, I'll end the game, give the dog a treat. So I'm always ending on a good note, and I'll take possession of the tug again. So I don't want the dog to initiate the play with me. I want to be the one that's controlling the games with my dog, particularly interactive games like that. It helps set good structure to the game. So I'm glad that she's playing fetch with her dog. That's a terrific outlet for energy. So I'm glad you're doing that. I hope by implementing these couple techniques, you'll be able to have a real smooth game of fetch.
Thanks. Um, do you recommend using collar, harness, um, halter, gentle leader for walks? What do you use and when?
Okay, that's a good question. That's a common question because leash pulling, like we said earlier, is all too common. I am not a big fan of the harness for a dog for the simple reason that you really put that harness around the dog's center of gravity, center of power, right around his chest. So you're really empowering the dog, giving him an anatomical advantage to really pull you down the road. So I'm not a huge fan of the harness. I think that is, setting a lot of owners up for pulling problems. Harnesses are used for pulling sleds and personal protection work to build drive and restraint. So I'm not a huge fan of the harness. I don't think it's useful. As far as a halty is concerned or something like that, that has its right time and place in training and in possibly on the walk. However, one word of caution with a halty is that if you have a dog that's excessively pulling now, I wouldn't strap a halty on because for the fact that the dog goes to pull and swings its body around, all that momentum is going to be, and that weight and that force is going to be thrown on the dog's neck. So I consider that to be a safety issue. So I would not endorse that for somebody that has a dog that's already pulling. I would not just throw a halty on. Not to say it's a bad tool, but it has its right time and place. So when it comes to achieving a structured loose leash walk, a lot of it has to do with our techniques, maintaining a loose leash. I have a certain protocol I follow with that. Loose leash walking is usually something I can achieve with an owner in one session for the most part, and they just fine tune it over the course of the following week. But you know, collar position also helps. Having the collar a little bit higher up on the dog's head helps a little bit, so that way it's not down low where they can pull through it. So there's a lot of different tools, but basically it comes down to technique, and I try to avoid a halty or a harness because I feel it's not going to work. It's setting us up to fail.
Okay, fantastic, good answer.
Thank you.
Do you believe, here's a new one. Cynthia asks, do you believe that dog food should be changed from time to time to give the most benefit to your dog?
That's an interesting question. I'm glad you asked that one. That is an interesting question. I like to stick with the same dog food for the most part. I don't think the dogs get bored of it. Most dogs inhale their dog food in 30 seconds, so it doesn't appear that they don't like the food. I like to feed a dog on a schedule, so that way they get fed a breakfast in the morning and then a dinner in the evening. So I always like to feed a dog on a schedule. Number one, it helps with housebreaking by feeding on a schedule. I don't like to free feed. I don't think it's beneficial. I know some people do, and they've had great success. So if it's working for them, then I'm happy. That's all that really matters. But I like to personally feed on a schedule, and I don't think the dogs really need to be changing different flavoring or brands of dog food. Possibly you could switch just the flavoring from a chicken to a salmon. However, some dogs have allergies, so you want to make sure that you're not feeding your dog something that they're allergic to. Check for corn, wheat, soy, common allergens for dogs. Some meats, some dogs are allergic to chicken, but they get okay with fish or salmon. So it's important. If you find something that works and it's working for the dog, I don't really see any need to switch it. That's something you could run by your vet and see if they feel that there's a reason why it would be beneficial for you to switch. But other than that, I just feed 2 meals a day, structured, a scheduled feeding, so the dog has a predictable schedule with that. Gives them something to look forward to. They know they're going to get it at a certain time, and if they like the food and it's working, I would just stick with it.
Okay, terrific. And the last question, because we want to finish on time, is from Karen. Karen says, my dog's been socialized since she was a puppy. What's the best thing to do when she gets protective about a stranger coming to my house? I'm specifically talking about repairmen coming to work on her appliance or something. Is it best to just place her in her crate or let her meet the person? And am I doing harm by never letting her greet a stranger who comes to my house?
That's a good question. That's something I deal with clients on a weekly basis. That's very common. So, like I said in my presentation earlier, we want to determine why is the dog having problems. Is it fear-based? Is it a territorial issue? Is it what is the underlying cause? And then we can try to implement the plan. If you know that there's a propensity for aggression, I would not just let the dog go right up and meet somebody because that's a safety issue, obviously. So I would put a plan in place, ultimately having the dog on an off-leash obedience level where I can place the dog in a place command and know that they're going to stay there under distractions for a long duration. So that way if an individual does come in the home, the dog doesn't feel the need to run over and either protect me in the home or act out of fear. They're going to relax comfortably in that place command because that's where they know to go and where to be. So a management tool would be to put the dog in a crate. So like I said, in my short-term plan, if I know that there's an issue, there's no reason why I wouldn't put the dog in a crate until I get them to that off-leash obedience where I have that reliability of having the dog stay in a place. So first determine why the dog is it out of fear? Is it territorial? What the situation is. You can manage it to keep everybody safe, keep the repairman safe, keep you safe, keep the dog safe, and manage it. Put the dog in another room or in another crate, and ultimately, hopefully, you can improve it so that way you can have off-leash reliability, and the dog will sit comfortably as people come in the home. So that's my suggestion on that, is to determine and put a plan into place after that.
That is fantastic, Steve. This was amazing. All right.
Well,
So,
well, thank you. I appreciate that, and thank you, Harlan, and thank you for everyone listening in. I appreciate this. Is a wonderful
thank
opportunity,
you
and
from, listen to
I
this.
appreciate.
Thank you from Australia, from a shelter
Wow.
worker. I love
Oh,
this
that's
whole
terrific.
series. So, first of all, guys, I personally want to say thank you to Merrick. Thanks from Estonia. Thank you for Merrick for sponsoring us. And Canada, all over, you guys. That's terrific. I saw someone from the UK too. So, um, and Hungary. Oh my gosh, who knew?
Oh, that's
Finland.
terrific.
So, guys, now we're going to give away a bag of Merrick's grain free real Texas beef. You know how it works. It's the first person to type in the correct answer is the winner. So, here we go. Now, I know you guys are going to really hit this one. Thanks for Sweden. Here we go. Uh, the number one word that's most important across the board is 30 days. Oh, Beth! I didn't even finish and you got it right. Okay. That was, I guess, Beth, you're a good student. Beth is our winner today. Beth, you won a 25-pound bag from Merrick. Please send your address into info@dogingtonpost.com. Beth had it typed in before I even finished what I was going to say. In your honor, Beth, Merrick will donate a bag of dog food to National Mill Dog Rescue. So, congratulations to all of you. We want to do this again. We want to do this again with you. We want to share. We want you guys to be the best possible dog parents to your babies. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us. And we're going to do this again. Um, thank you so much, Steve. This was so awesome. And everybody,
Th-
take care. Bye, everybody. Love you all, and belly rubs to you and your babies.